Hi everyone, you're watching Incredible Discourse. Alright everyone, so you want to know what a Japan is? Well, then this video is for you. Today we're going to be focusing on the geographic aspects of what Japan is. So if you ever found yourself asking the question, am I in Japan? Well, this is going to be something you're going to want to pay attention to. So what is Japan? Most people know Japan as the nation-state in East Asia, famous for World War II and our most beloved childhood memories. And I guess colonization too, if you live in East Asia. Japan, as we know it today, is a product of the end of World War II, geographically speaking. But during the 20th century, Japan expanded and then contracted greatly. The history of Japan is more accurately the history of an ever-expanding Yamato polity. The history of Japan is the story of growth. It's a similar fashion to the way the U.S. has manifest destiny. But unlike the U.S., Japan is a much older nation, and its expansion started much earlier. From the advent of the Yamato Clan, which was founded by the legendary first emperor Jimmu Tenno, to the first constitution written by Prince Shikoku, all the way to the end of World War II, Japan has been an ever-increasing political entity. Understanding this trajectory for Japan helps us to better understand the historical position it was in during the 20th century and how those events shaped the nation-state that exists today. So, let's go on a trip through the expansive history of the Japanese Empire. Starting off, we have the Jomon Period. The Jomon Period lasted approximately 13,000 years, and the people who lived in the islands are somewhat related to the people who live in the nation-state of Japan and are identified as Japanese. The people of the Jomon period are much closer related to the contemporary Ainu. But what we're talking about here, the Jomon period, not really Japan yet. And this ends around 1000 BC to 800 BC. Estimates different. And then we have the founding of the Yamato Clan by the legendary emperor Jimmu Tenno, which supposedly takes place in the 600s BC. But keynote, Jomon period, not really Japan yet. The Jomon period is followed by the Yayoi period. And the Yayoi period is characterized by the development of rice agriculture, the use of iron technology, the use of copper alloy technology, and a huge influx of culture and peoples from continental Asia. More so the Korean Peninsula and parts of continental China. But they came into the islands nonetheless. But of course those islands, not Japan yet. Close. It's getting very close to being Japan. Starting around 300 AD, we now enter the Kofun Period. And the Kofun Period is really characterized by massive key-shaped tombs. So these are huge earthenworks that are created as burials. A lot of speculation is that the tradition is that these are the burial sites of the first emperors. So here we now start to see tangible physical archaeological evidence for the establishment of a state. And this state is the Yamato Court, concentrated in the Kansai area. And this is the political entity that will grow into the nation of Japan, the Empire of Japan, and the modern nation state of Japan. And this is also when we start to get close to getting that name Japan. Because at this point, the islands, the Japanese archipelago, the people living there are referred to as the people of Wa. So not Japan, they're called Wa, the Waians. So after the Kofun period, we have the Asuka period. And the Asuka period is characterized by the establishment of what is going to be known as Japan, where we get Nippon, we get the land of the rising sun. We get an influx of Confucian ideology, we get an influx of Buddhist culture and religion, and we start to see more continental government starting to form and take root in the islands. This transition can best be characterized and seen in Prince Shikoku's constitution. And in this constitution, he lays out a plan for how the islands of Japan will be governed and will be ruled, although he never actually becomes emperor. So, moving forward, seeing that this is going to concentrate on the geography, we're going to take a look at the different islands in the Japanese archipelago and see when they became Japan. As we've said before, Japan as a political entity really starts off in the Kansai region, centered in the middle of Honshu, which is the largest island in the Japanese archipelago. But the very first island in the Japanese archipelago to fully become a part of Japan is Shikoku. Shikoku is an island that is kind of hugged by Honshu. And we can see that it's right here in the picture. It's kind of hugged by the island of Honshu. And it's called Shikoku because it's made of 4 provinces. Shikoku, 4 countries or lands. And those 4 today, I guess, traditionally are Awa, Tosa, Sanuki, and Iyo. There's not a real clear histories that I've been able to get about when it first became absorbed into the political Yamato Court, the political entity that is Japan. But the earliest significant event that happens on Shikoku is that Kukai is born there. Kukai, as you may remember from Japanese history, is a Buddhist monk. He's very influential. He's often credited as the inventor of the kana system, so hiragana and katakana, and he's pretty great. The first island after Shikoku to be fully incorporated into the Japanese political entity is Kyushu. Kyushu is absorbed in the late 700s during the Taikai reforms. And although it does get absorbed during this period, the Kumaso and the Hayahito are partly brought under the rule of the imperial house. These two factions of people, the Kumaso and the Hayahito, and we can really kind of look at them as the bear people, Kuma, and the hawk or falcon people, Haya, the Hayahito, falcon people, Kumaso. These two groups will kind of cause trouble and be the spark of conflict moving forward. And when we get into the 20th century, they're also some of the more militaristic people in the islands. Just a fun fact right there. Very enthusiastic people. So, now that we have Shikoku fully incorporated into the Japanese political entity, we have Kyushu completely absorbed into the Japanese political entity. The next island that we have to look at is Honshu. And Honshu is where it started, but because of how long and large it is, it hasn't fully been incorporated by the 800s. It's not really until the end of the 1100s that the entire island of Honshu is brought into this political unit that is Japan, the Empire of Japan. So now the only main island in the Japanese archipelago that we're still missing is Hokkaido. And Hokkaido's a special case because it technically wasn't fully incorporated until 1869. And that's a big jump between Honshu being fully incorporated in the 1100s and then Hokkaido finally coming in 1869. But the southern part of the island was colonized by the Japanese in the 1100s. So once the Japanese push north to finish taking and colonizing Honshu, they start to colonize the southern parts of Hokkaido. So around 1185, they start to develop trade with the Ainu. And the Ainu are, the easy way to think about it is that they're the descendants of the Jomon peoples. Which they technically are, but it's complicated. And the full island of Hokkaido did not fully come under the control of the central government until after the Meiji Restoration. Then the Meiji government denied their claim to become an independent nation, but approved their not request to become a beautiful prefecture. This is also one of the only prefectures, it's the only prefecture, that has a do at the end of it. Hokkaido, the Northern Sea Way, which is interesting, and it kind of denotes how Hokkaido is a special snowflake. They also have snow. So, after Hokkaido, and really kind of in concert with the colonization of Hokkaido, Japan and the Japanese entity set their sights on other places, one of them famously being the Korean Peninsula. Historically speaking, the descendants, the founders of the Yamato Court and the Japanese emperors themselves, well, traditionally they come from heaven, they come from the deities, but if we want to look at this from the archaeological record, they very likely came from the Korean Peninsula. And in the spirit of bringing it all together, the Japanese, in several attempts to go back to the Korean Peninsula and kind of invite them into the party with guns and unfair treaties that they learned from Europeans. And starting in 1905, Korea begins to go down the slippery slope to becoming a Japanese territory. And then it becomes a Japanese territory and stays a Japanese territory until the end of World War II. But Korea is not the only foreign territory on the menu that gets to become Japan. All of the islands that are going down to the south of the archipelago, if we can think about what is today Okinawa, you have the Ryukyu Kingdom. And this kingdom is not, historically has not been Japanese, but it soon learns how to be Japanese because the Japanese entities come down, they say, hey, you should come be Japan. And they decide, you know what, we'd like some of that Japan. And now, boom, you get that small little archipelago going down to Okinawa, becoming official Japanese islands. And you know what? Why stop there? And if you can see moving down and southwest of Okinawa, you can see the island of Taiwan. Taiwan, for a significant period of time, was a Japanese possession. And one of the real main reasons that the Japanese Empire took over Taiwan is because China, continental China at that point in time, was not liking Japan very well. We're not really on good terms, and they cut off trade. So to circumvent this, the Japanese took over Taiwan, didn't tell anyone about it, especially the Chinese, and they engaged with commerce with mainland China through Taiwan. So by the end of the 1800s, Japan consists of the four main Japanese islands that we know and love today: Hokkaido, Honshu, Kyushu, and Shikoku. They've got the Ryukyu Islands. They've got Taiwan. They've got they're starting to get Manchuria, the northern part of China. They've got the Korean Peninsula. And in the beginning of the 1900s, there happens to be a world war. And, fun fact, Japan was on the American side, fighting the Germans in Asia. Not a lot of Germans in Asia, but all of the German colonies and possessions in China they became forfeit to the Japanese. And after World War I, Japan really got into this whole colonization thing. They got to join the League of Nations, and they did not make friends there by taking over the rest of the islands in the Pacific, such as the Philippines. They took over Thailand, took over Burma, took over British Malaysia. They took over lots of other ones. Most of the islands in the South China Sea. And then they ended up bombing a small island called Oahu and ended up hitting a couple boats in Pearl Harbor. So the Japanese Empire gets into fisticuffs with the U.S., its allies England, Australia, Canada, and I guess the French were there too. And it turns out did not end well for the Japanese Empire. Kind of, went out with a bang. And then, we all know what happened after that. And if you don't know what happened after that, watch this film. Grave of of the Fireflies. It'll break your heart. Absolutely break your heart. It's a beautiful film. So, after the war, like we said previously, the territory that the Japanese Empire had accumulated was stripped from them, and they were let loose and became their own entities again, such as the Philippines and Thailand and Malaysia and Guam. That's an American territory right there. Guam. But this contraction of the Japanese Empire established the territories of the modern nation state of Japan. Although there are several areas that are contested, just north of Hokkaido, there are a couple islands that it shares with Russia, and Japan and Russia never really finished World War II, so there's a bit of contention there. Japan and Korea never really settled their differences. They kind of have hard feelings towards each other still. And there's some islands that are disputed between Japan and the Korean nations, North and South Korea. But yeah, so this is the continued expansion of the Japanese little political entity in Kansai, little nestled there in the middle of Honshu, expanding out to most of the Pacific Ocean, and then contracting again after they got nuked. So, I hope you enjoyed this little video about the geographic adventures of the Japanese. If you like this video, please click the subscribe button. If you like the video even more, leave a comment. Let me know what you thought. Put a question there. If you got a topic about the East Asia or the Japan that you think would be a cool video to make, let me know. That's what the comments are for. All right.